Hey, I'm Danny, and today we're going to be talking about garage golf tech, specifically launch monitors. We're going to be looking at two budget options today, the square launch monitor as well as the Rapsodo MLM2 Pro. I've been spending some time with both of these, and I've got some thoughts around things I really like about the square, things I really like about the Rapsodo, and where each of these might be a good fit depending on your circumstances. For me, what I'm looking for mostly out of my garage golf setup is fun. I love golf, but I'm terrible and I don't have any friends and I'm busy. And all those things together, they make it really hard to justify going to spend $100 and taking 5 hours out of my day to go get paired up with some rando who's probably a scratch golfer who's gonna laugh at all of my bladed shots that run over the green. And it turns into not such a good time. I just feel bad about myself after paying $100 and spending all that time investment. And so for me, garage golf, it's a great way to enjoy the sport without those downsides. I can play on my own time constraints, whether I need to get a quick session in or whether I want to spend a lot of time on a full 18 holes. I can have friends over, I can play by myself, I can drink my own drinks, I can eat my own snacks. I love it. And you might think $700 sounds like a lot of money if you haven't gotten into the launch monitor world yet, but man, that's 7 rounds of golf for me, not counting snacks and drinks and all the other expenses that go along with a real round of golf. And for me, that's a no-brainer. That's a great value. I enjoy it. I get to play through winter, whether it's raining or clear out. I get to practice courses that I don't get to play very often. So I don't go play a real course very often. So if I can go play it on the simulator and kind of learn it a little bit before heading out, that's amazing. That's a huge value add for me. It's one of the big points we'll be talking about today. And I've seen a lot of stuff on Reddit, on YouTube comment threads, and there's a lot of people that are like, why would you even go for the Rapsodo anymore when the square can do putting and has a great built-in app and all this stuff? And I don't think it's so cut and dry. I think there's a lot of cases where the Rapsodo is the winner. We'll go through some of those in detail. We'll talk about some of those when we look at some course play and look at the driving ranges. But there's some real physical reasons, some constraint reasons you'd pick one versus the other. The square launch monitor doesn't need a lot of space. It can sit right next to the ball, and you don't need 8 feet behind you. You don't need 8 feet in front of you. It means a very small window to capture that ball data. It's a huge win here if you have a small room. You need probably 16 feet in length to use the Rapsodo, which sits behind the ball. The benefit of having the Rapsodo behind the ball is it doesn't matter if you're playing with righties and lefties. You can alternate shots between a right-handed player and a left-handed player, and you don't have to move the launch monitor. With the square and other photometric units that sit next to the ball, every time you want to switch between a different-handed player, you have to move the launch monitor and make sure it's aligned again, and that's a real hassle. I mean, it's kind of a non-starter for course play with friends. So that said, the square, it's got some huge advantages. It supports putting, which is pretty amazing. It has club data, like whether you're swinging in to out, whether you're coming down on a downward attack angle. That's really nice, but it doesn't have club speed. It doesn't give you smash factor. And those are fun elements to see, especially when you're playing with friends, trying to just crush long drives. So I think it depends on what you want. The other big thing the Rapsodo has going for it is the software gives you data metrics galore. So if you're a data nerd, if you want to look at your shot dispersion and your average yardages and see all of the carry distances across your different clubs in a given range session, if you want to go play 18 holes and then go back and look at one of your amazing shots and watch the shot replay and see all of the metrics on that individual shot, you can do that. That's pretty amazing. The square, it doesn't give you any of that. When you're on the driving range, you hit a shot and you see some data, you move on to the next shot, and that's all you got. You live in the present, you live in the now. You can export that data to CSV or Excel or something if you want to put it into a spreadsheet, but that's not what I'm talking about. This gives you in-app, cross-device insights into all of your range sessions, practice sessions, course play, all of it. Now, if you're into putting, this is your option. We'll look at putting gameplay, we'll look at that as well, but pairing this with GSPro gives you the most realistic golf simulator experience. It's pretty amazing. The realism adds to the fun. And I love playing my local course, the Meadows, on GSPro with the square launch monitor. I love playing it with the square launch monitor because it lets me putt, and I do enjoy that. When I'm going for realism, the square launch monitor plus GSPro, that's a great combination. But if I'm interested in playing with mixed-handed players and I'm interested in watching shot replays and the impact vision camera and all that stuff, which is pretty cool, the Rapsodo It has a huge leg up. So if I had to pick one of these and say, okay, let's take GSPro out of the conversation. Let's just pick one of these launch monitors based on their packaged software. I'd go with the Rapsodo. The Square launch monitor software, it's so basic and there's so few controls. What I have up right now is a course on the Square launch monitor, one of the native courses, and they look great. I think they're more realistic, I think, than the Rapsodo courses, but they're not real courses, and there's not that many of them. And there's some other frustrations as well, like there's a hard limit in the system that you can only have 3 mulligans in an 18-hole round, and you can only use one of those mulligans per hole. I usually end up using these mulligans on misreads. On the Rapsodo software, I don't have that limitation. There's a lot more flexibility on the Rapsodo launch monitor, kind of play around on those 18 holes however you want. Okay, so when I think about who would buy these, the Square launch monitor, the potential total cost of ownership is really low. You buy the unit for $700, you get 1,000 free credits. A credit basically pays for one person to play 1 hole of golf, so that's 1,000 holes of golf. And you don't have to use any credits to do things like driving range or closest to the pin game modes or anything like that. You get all of the features, even without paying a subscription to Square. You get ball data, you get club data. With the Rapsodo, some of that stuff you only get if you have a subscription with Rapsodo. So if your main factor here is you want to spend as little money as possible on an ongoing basis, the Square, it's hard to beat. GSPro can be used with either of these launch monitors, but one of the key differences around cost, again, comes down to the Rapsodo. In order to connect it with third-party software like GSPro, you also have to have a Rapsodo subscription, so you have to stack those 2 costs on top of each other. I think it's like $299 plus another $200 every year. But the Square launch monitor, there's no subscription. If you want to buy GSPro and run that on your own, there's no extra cost to connect that to the Square launch monitor. That's really nice. I'm not sure any other launch monitors are like that. So that's the other thing to consider, I think, is are you gonna buy GSPro at $299 a year, or do you really want to depend on the software that comes bundled with whichever launch monitor you buy? In my opinion, if you were going to purchase GSPro, if that's a gimme, if that's something that you know you're going to do, I'd go with the Square for sure, 100%. But that's a whole nother layer of complexity a lot of people don't want to deal with. Beyond the launch monitor, what are you willing to invest in the rest of your setup? At a baseline, you can play simulated golf with just a launch monitor and your phone or an iPad. You know, maybe you already have one of these laying around. This is all you need to get started. But GSPro doesn't run on this. GSPro won't run on an iPad. It won't run on a Mac. It won't run on your phone. GSPro requires a gaming PC or a gaming laptop. So if you're thinking about like, oh yeah, Square's a gimme, it plays great with GSPro. Everybody says it's amazing. That's true. But you've got the licensing cost of GSPro, and you've got the cost and bulk and complexity of building something and storing something like this. So that's the other consideration. Are you willing to invest in, or do you already have a gaming PC that you're gonna put somewhere in your golf simulator setup? Or would you rather just pair an iPad or a phone that you already have with the launch monitor and be done with it? If your answer to the GSPro question, that gaming PC question, is yeah, I wanna go that route, I'm happy to have a PC. I'm happy to run a little connector app to connect one of these launch monitors to GSPro. If you're okay with that extra complexity, I think GSPro and the Square launch monitor is probably my favorite combo right now. For me, if you were relying on the built-in simulator software that comes with each of these, the Rapsodo is the winner by a long shot. Yes, you lose the putting capability, and some people will say, yeah, you lose club data as well, and that's true to an extent, but like I said, the impact vision camera, it really shows you that. You can see whether your swing path is in to out. So I wanted to show you kind of a side-by-side of how GSPro renders courses versus how Rapsodo's built-in software does. Both of these have a really giant catalog of real-life courses, but for now we have one that's maybe more familiar to most people, and this is Torrey Pines South. This is a course I had a chance to play with my father-in-law. Tee box on the first hole. This looks exactly like it does in real life. What you'll see on the Rapsodo software is it's got the same layout, bunker positioning, fairway shape, greens, all that. It's right, but it doesn't look true to life. They have kind of generic trees, generic backdrop. So here we are on hole 1 on Torrey Pines South. It's a real long, straight fairway. I'll be lucky to keep it in play. We'll give it a shot here. low and straight. I'll take that. Okay, so I've got 42 feet, 43 feet left to the pin. It supports putting out of the box. So whether you're on GSPro or whether you're using the Square built-in software, the putting experience is really pretty great. And if you really want to make things hard on yourself, you can turn off gimmies altogether and putt out every single hole. Let's see what we can do here on this 43-foot putt. I have about 10 feet from me to the screen, about 4 times that distance in my mind. A little bit left to right. This is a long putt. I got it into my 5-foot gimme ring, and so it moves me on to the next hole with a par. First tee box, Torrey Pines South, 250 yards before I get in any trouble. Should not be an issue for me. That's about all I can ask for. I'm hitting off these Matzilla mats today. If you haven't seen my other video on these, if you're interested in checking out a pretty affordable, pretty nice feeling mat option, check out that video. We're looking at 153 yards. I'm gonna try to take just a little bit off of the swing and see if we can get it close. Came up a little short. So that's a 3 putt. Not as good as I did on GSPro. So now we're on the Square Launch Monitor app. This is running on my iPad. This is Olympus Garden Golf Course, one of the built-in courses that comes with the Square Launch Monitor. It's a par 5, but I'm gonna tee off with a 3-wood because there's trouble at about 275 yards. So this will help me stay safe and short of that. Hopefully we can end up in the fairway and have a good second shot. So for my second shot, there's a string of bunkers down here on the right side I want to stay away from. My safest bet here is probably a 5-iron. My 5-iron is about a 200-yard club for me, so I'm going to aim left of those bunkers, hopefully end up in a safe spot, and we'll be chipping. Felt pretty clean. And that just trickled out to the left, but I think that's okay. You can see here, the Square app shows me I got a negative 10% penalty for the rough I'm sitting in. I've got 49 yards to the pin and 30 yards to the front edge of the green. So we'll see if I can get a chip here on the green and show you how putting looks. If this is a bad chip, I may end up taking a mulligan to show you what that system looks like. One of the things I don't like about the Square app for playing courses is that you only get 3 mulligans per 18 holes, and you only get to use 1 mulligan per hole. So if you have a misread and you want to use a mulligan, just be aware. I probably get 3 misreads around. I end up saving my mulligans for those. That's not ideal, but that's probably the biggest drawback with the built-in software aside from not having real courses. So that was a misread. That clearly had the height. It hit the top of my screen, but didn't register correctly. So if I want to take a mulligan, I hit this little refresh icon. I've got 3 mulligans remaining. I'm going to use 1. So now at this point, I'm reset. I'm going to try the shot again, and we'll see if we get a clean read this time. Much better. Much, much better. So unfortunately that landed inside my gimme ring of 4 feet. I would mulligan again so that we could try that, but I can't since I used my 1 mulligan. Okay, we'll go on to the next hole. I'll putt out. I'll show you what putting looks like on the Square. All right, so this next hole, par 3, 143 yards, up 2.4 yards. I'm going to try to hit a 9-iron here. So we'll set this to 9-iron, not pitching wedge. Pretty straightforward shot. If I can get close here, I just want to show you what putting looks like, and we'll be done.
Ready?
All right, 143 yards. For me, that's a pretty strong pitching wedge or a pretty light 9-iron, so this could go either way. It's kind of between clubs for me. 9-iron, 143 yards on the square simulator. It's out to the right, but that's okay. We'll be putting. I really like the square launch monitor putting experience. These moving lines show you the slope of the green. I've got 29 feet to the pin. In my setup, I have about 10 feet from where I'm hitting to the screen, so I know it's about 3 times this distance. Putting is not my strong suit, but we'll see if we can get it close here. 30 feet, barely uphill, a little bit right to left. And I didn't quite get into my 4-foot gimme ring. So this next putt, we're looking at 6 feet. So I should not quite hit it to the screen. It's barely right to left, barely uphill. And I missed. So that's why my scores with full putting aren't so great. I think it's a very realistic putting experience. I think it's comparable to the putting experience on GSPro. Definitely one of the nice things you get out of the square launch monitor. For me, if I'm playing 18 holes, especially if I'm playing with friends, a casual round though, this is too punishing. I need more than 3 mulligans per 18 holes. I need to be able to take mulligans on misreads. I'd like to have a couple left to use for discretionary mulligans. Sometimes I just want to try the same difficult shot over and over. Sometimes I want to try some different shot shapes, and I can't do that on the square. So that's one of the big drawbacks for me. The practice modes are great. The driving range is great, closest to the pin, putting practice. Love those. But course play, even though it looks really nice, even though the putting experience is great, I don't end up using it very often just because of the mulligans. I want to be able to take my shots over, especially when it's not my fault, when it's the launch monitor's fault. I hope this gets addressed in a future software update. I'll update the description or put a comment if I see that. But for now, that's my take on the course play aspect of the square simulator. If I wasn't spoiled, if I hadn't played anything else, I think I'd be perfectly happy with this. I think it's worth giving a try as a starting point. And if it's not enough for you, maybe then you look at something like GSPro. So I also want to give you a comparison of the driving range experience on the Rapsodo's built-in driving range, the square launch monitor's built-in driving range, and GSPro. So I'm hitting my 5-wood here. We're on the Rapsodo range, and we'll talk about some of these data points in just a second. That is way out to the left. So what you can see there on the data points, if we bring this up, what you'll see is it doesn't tell you anything about the club path, but it does give you ball speed, club speed, smash factor, which is nice. I've been drawing and hooking everything way left, so let's try to get this one a little bit straighter. That's a little better. It's kind of my draw shot shape, which is what I usually have. But you can see the shots, they take a little while. You hit the ball, you wait for a second. That should be way out to the right and hopefully coming back to the left. All right, now we're gonna hit a few wedge shots. I'm gonna hit my pitching wedge. So now what I have up is the square launch monitor and its built-in driving range and the Square iPad app. This is the one that comes with it. It doesn't require a subscription or anything. The driving range, it's part of, once you purchase the product, you get access to this. You don't have to use any credits. You don't have to have a subscription. That's really nice. You can't set your elevation. So I'm in Denver. I'm a mile high but the application shows what the air pressure is. I'm not sure if that affects the ball flight the same as the elevation setting in the Rapsodo. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. Trying to draw that one a little bit. So one of the things I want to point out while we're looking at the square driving range is we have club path on that right, in to out. We have attack angle, so I can see I was hitting down on the ball with an in to out path, dynamic loft, some things that we don't get on the Rapsodo, but we don't have club speed. We don't have smash factor. Some people really like to see how fast they're swinging the club, myself included. One of the other nice things about the square launch monitor that I mentioned is how quickly it registers shots. So I've got a pitching wedge in hand now, and we'll see after I hit this ball how quick the screen registers this shot. It's almost real time. All right, so we've hit a few shots on the Rapsodo and the square driving ranges. Now I've got GSPro up behind me. This is hooked up to the square launch monitor. We're gonna hit a few shots with the 5-wood and with the pitching wedge again. What you can see is there's a lot of data points on screen, but we can turn this off for a more immersive experience. We'll look at that in just a second. But if you want all the data points up there, you can customize all these tiles. You can change all of the data points that are persistent on screen. We'll hit a few here with 5-wood and then with pitching wedge. Big high shot. Just out to the left. All right, so I'm going to turn off the data point so you can see what this would look like if you wanted to play this in a more immersive fashion. On GSPro, the shortcut for that is just H. So this turns off all the data points. This gives me a much cleaner view of the range, maybe a little bit more realistic. If you like playing like this without all the data points, you just want to see your shots, you want to see your flight, this is a great way to do it. So I'm hitting a few shots now with my pitching wedge on the GSPro driving range. I've got the square launch monitor hooked up. We've got the target set to 140 yards. We'll see if we can get close. One's out to the right. $128 yards. We need a little more on it. Look at that, 140. The GSPro driving range, it's a really nice option. Again, this pairs with the square or the Rapsodo with little connector apps. Maybe we'll talk more about that in another video, but again, if you don't mind the extra hassle of a gaming PC and connecting and the subscription, GSPro is really nice. The practice facilities are really nice. I wish they had a free trial, but they don't. So you got to pay your $2.99 just to try it out. At the end of the day, these are both really fun, tons of fun. If you had one and you never played on the other one, I don't think you'd feel like you're missing much at all. If you're partial to one versus the other, I'd love to know why and what that specific reason is. You won't have buyer's remorse, I don't think. If you buy one of these or the other, I think you'll become a fan of whichever one you end up buying and you won't have any regrets.